Hello class, and welcome to our today's video. Today we are going to discuss about the internal audit. So far, we have seen what is all about auditing. And when we were talking about the branches of auditing, I did mention that one of the classifications that audit is classified, it is either the internal audit or the external audit among other classifications. I will start by saying that complex or big organizations, upon realizing the complexity of the operations, they have seen the importance of having this particular department in the organization so that it can review and recommend on areas that need adjustments so that the objectives can be met. So simply, the internal audit is meant to ensure that the organization is actually operating in a manner that is efficient so that they can achieve the objectives, as well as ensuring that they comply with the external regulatory rules and regulations. So basically, I'll start by looking at the duties of internal audit personnel. Number one, they review the economic efficiency and effectiveness of the company's operations. Number two, they review the company compliance with the external laws and regulation and internal policies and procedure. And also number three, they review and advise the management on development of key organizational systems and implementation of major changes in that particular organization. Of importance here to note is that internal audit, the person who is in charge of that particular office is actually known as the internal auditor. And the internal auditor is an employee of that particular organization, as opposed to an external auditor who will come from a different and independent body or organization that is to confirm whether actually the organization policies and procedures are maintained in a manner likely to suggest that the interests of the shareholders are being upheld. Up to this particular moment, allow me to look at the elements of a good internal audit. Elements of a good internal audit. What will make us see that this particular internal audit in a particular organization is actually good or bad? Number one, it is the element of integrity. Every audit should be founded upon professionalism, whereby the internal auditor should exercise the audit professionalism of true and fair review of the affairs of that particular organization without any kind of biasness and without any prejudice from any external forces. Number two is fair presentation. Every audit has a responsibility to report its finding in a manner that is not only accurate, but also truthful. Don't go into an extent whereby, because the senior managers or the senior employees in that organization are your relatives or friend, then you tend to hide some crucial information about the organization's affairs so that maybe you can protect their interest. Number three is the element of due professional care. And here, every audit should be done in such a way that good judgment and due diligence are applied to the process. Make sure that all the information that needs to be reviewed is reviewed so that now the element of due professional care is upheld. Number three is confidentiality. The confidentiality aspect here is this. Remember, the internal audit or the auditing process involves a case whereby you will be in possession of very sensitive information. And as a result of that, because you are getting in touch with sensitive and actually confidential information about an organization, then you should exercise confidentiality and use that information only for the course of your duty and not to reveal it to external parties who are not relevant to that particular organization. The third and also very crucial, the element is the independence. Independence here, the audit should not be coerced to do its work or to report in a particular way, but to exercise now the issue of integrity, fair presentation, and all that without any form of external forces. And then lastly, we have evidence-based approach. When you are reporting whether the accounts or the organization is being conducted well or not, then you should do that with the basis of evidence that you have gathered in the process of audit and not through malice or any form of pressure. Differences between internal auditing and external audit. These differences are on the following basis. Number one is on the objective. The objective of internal auditing is to advise management on whether organization has a sound internal control to protect against any loss, whereas the objective of the external audit is to provide an opinion as to whether or not the financial statements show a true and fair view of the company's state of affairs. In terms of legal basis, the internal auditing is not a must. It is not a legal requirement that an organization should have an internal audit department. But when it comes to external audit, it is actually a legal requirement for companies and actually public bodies or parastatals to have their accounts audited and published. So on terms of legal basis, internal is not actually a must, but external for the companies is a must. In terms of scope, internal it covers areas of organization, i.e. operation as well as financial, whereas when it comes to external, it is purely financial. It does not focus on any other areas as opposed to the internal. The approach that is used, you'll find that in the internal, it is increasingly risk-based. The approach is to assess the risk, to evaluate systems of control and test operation of the system, and finally make the recommendation for the improvement. Remember here, the internal is to evaluate the risk, and remember, a risk is anything that can bring about loss. So we are trying to find out, do we have loopholes that can lead to loss in our organization? But the approach of external is actually risk-based, but it only tests underlying transactions that form having failed or having been captured in the financial statements. The responsibility. The responsibility of the internal auditor is to advise and make recommendations, while the responsibility of the external auditor is to form an opinion on whether financial statements show a true and fair view in that particular financial period. Maybe we can also talk about the scope and objectives of internal audit. How far does the internal audit go? Number one, review of accounting internal control system. Remember, internal control system, we said, are the procedures that an organization adopts in carrying out operations so that it can minimize losses and also increase the chances of attaining the objectives that it has laid down. So the objective of the internal audit and the scope is actually to review the accounting internal control system. How are the payments made? How are the salaries and wages paid or made? How does maybe the fixed asset schedule prepared, so that actually at the end of the day, no finances are lost or no assets are lost. Number two, scope is carrying out examination of financial and operational information. Remember, when we talk about operation, is how it operates, things the organization has put in place so that actually it can have a very smooth running, whereas financial here is to ensure that now the statements of accounts are prepared in accordance with the accounting policies and procedures. Number three is to review the economic efficiency and effectiveness of operation, including non-financial controls of the entity. Also, we have a scope of to review the company's compliance with external laws and regulation. And number next is review the entity's compliance with the management policies and other internal requirements, and carrying out independent investigation into company's affairs as required by the management. Similarities between the two types of audit, that is internal and external. If we can start with the first one, both auditors are concerned about the strength and proper functioning of the internal control system, both the internal and the external. Number two, both auditors have part of their duties to ensure that the companies adhere to all relevant laws and regulations. Number three, both auditors interested in ensuring that the company keeps proper books of records. And then the next one is that both auditors are concerned about prevention and detection of errors and frauds. and both auditors have interest in safeguarding the company assets. You realize now, having looked at all those particular areas, you should be having a very clear idea in your mind that internal audit is actually about reviewing how the internal affairs of the company is being conducted to ensure that all the assets and also the capital of that particular organization is safeguarded, so that now the organization can be said to be conducting its affairs in a very true and fair way. Now we can look at how far does the external auditor rely on the work of the internal auditor? How far does the organization rely on that? Actually, this one will depend on some things, like, for example, the organization status. So, if, for example, we can say, and we have actually looked at it, that the internal audit function is part of the entity. So, meaning that this particular employee is actually employed by the top management of that organization. So you should try to find out whether that particular audit has been accepted and actually has been given the independence it has, so that now it can be relied upon, or the reports it makes can be relied. But if you find that the internal auditor is not free to conduct his duty and actually is being coerced by the top management on what to do and what not to do, you'll find that now you cannot rely on his or her work. Number two basis that you are going to consider is the scope of the function. How far does the internal auditor go? Does he or she cover all the areas of the organization, or he or she does partly the part of that particular organization? If, for example, the internal auditor is given a chance to do a thorough investigation on all the functions of that particular organization, then you can say that that particular report that is going to table is going to be very comprehensive, and the internal auditor can also rely on the information given thereon. We also have the technical competence. Does this particular internal auditor have the competence? Is he qualified? Does he have the relevant qualifications to be appointed in that level? If, for example, this particular auditor, yes, he has fulfilled all the requirements to be appointed there, and actually he has all the qualification, then any report that particular internal auditor is going to table can be relied upon. Number 4 is on the due professional care. The external auditor should confirm whether the internal auditor, when doing the internal auditing, did actually comply with the due professional care, whether there was work plans, there was supervision, documentation of audit evidence, and all that, meaning that the internal auditor should actually conduct his or her work in a way that is stipulated by the auditing as a profession. Availability of resources. Here, the external auditor will try to find out whether the internal auditor was given all the resources he or she needs so that he can do a very adequate and thorough job of the internal auditing, including staff, finances, and actually time. Advantages of internal audit function. Advantages. Number 1, it reinforces the application of internal controls, thus enables the company to operate in an orderly and efficient way. It prevents and detects errors and faults, meaning that now the resources are going to be safeguarded. Assist management in implementation of company policies through reporting on adherence or non-adherence of the laid down policies of the company. Number 4, it assists external auditor in highlighting areas of weakness in the internal control through the report that they are going to make. The number 5 is assists the company in achieving its objective by ensuring that all laid down rules and procedures are actually being adhered. And the other advantage is that the internal audit function guards the organization's resources against theft and misuse. You'll find that now, having had that particular brief analysis of what actually the internal auditing is all about, I think now it's going to be very easy for you as students also now to look at other areas and find it very easy for you to understand. Thank you for listening.